Issue 2, Hamas versus Fatah.
Fierce fighting in Palestine this month has brought terrible news from Gaza, but also perhaps a sliver of hope. Gaza is a strip of overcrowded land, 25 miles long, about 5 miles wide, 140 square miles along the Mediterranean Sea, joined politically to the much larger West Bank, 2,300 square miles, 16 times bigger than Gaza. Late last week in Gaza, the radical Islamic Hamas routed the moderate secular Fatah. This left the Palestinian Authority split in two. Gaza ruled by Hamas and the West Bank ruled by Fatah. And this is how President Bush sees the current state of affairs. Fatah governing the West Bank and Hamas governing a kind of fascist mini-state, Gaza.
We're looking at the difference between a group of people that want to represent the Palestinians who believe in peace, that want a better way for their people, that believe in democracy, versus a group of radicals and extremists who are willing to use violence, unspeakable violence sometimes, to achieve a political objective.
This dichotomizing of Palestine by the president was further emphasized by the spokesman for the State Department.
As for the idea that we are somehow treating Fatah and Hamas differently, absolutely. Hamas is a terrorist organization, and we're not going to provide aid to a terrorist organization.
Question. In reviving the permanent status peace talks between Palestinians and Israelis, what's the principal problem created by Hamas? Christian Freeland.
Well, I want to tell you what I think is the principal opportunity first, because I do think that now that you have Fatah clearly without Hamas in control of the West Bank, for the rest of the world, it's created a real opportunity, which people have jumped on to engage with them. The difficulty is that you also have a very clear area, clearly controlled by Hamas, and that could be, even more than before, a magnet for radicals. And if the engagement with Fatah, which controls now a space, doesn't work, then you could see a permanent division.
You know, what about this reason, that Hamas was legally and democratically elected, whereas the government in the West Bank, which was recently appointed by Abu Mazen, was appointed, not democratically elected.
Yeah, I think you just can't wish away people who were elected, and by marginalizing them, you're just going to increase the radicalism in that sliver of humanity. And I think that the opportunity is just a nice spin put on a disastrous situation, and one that we invited by marginalizing Hamas. I must say I was with a small group of reporters who met with the Prime Minister of Israel at Blair House earlier in the week, and he does not conduct himself like a man who is at 17% in the polls. And so,
what does that mean?
What does that mean? I think he wants to remain in office. I think he is trying to look for an opening. He's going to meet with the leaders of Egypt and Jordan. He was
also very conciliatory on, more so than I've ever heard, on the refugee status, which was what caught in the throat of Arafat and the Palestinians after the last Camp David meeting. You know what I'm referring to?
If you are referring to the Palestinians and their right of return, I don't think there is a single change in the position of Israel on that.
Well, I mean, that's stretching it. That's the ultimate point. But he had some very nice words when he was here, and they were conciliatory words. Which Olmert has been very conciliatory in terms of his desire to see if there is an opportunity created by the fact that Fatah is no longer hindered by Hamas in terms of what it might do. But I would point out to you that Hamas did very well in the West Bank in the election the last time around, and they control the mayoralty of a whole group of cities, including Ramallah and Bethlehem. Hamas is very powerful in the West Bank, and for the following reason, and the reason why Fatah lost in Gaza. Fatah is a totally corrupt organization. They all have expensive villas. They make a lot of money. They drive around in chauffeured limousines, while the average Palestinian is really in terrible shape. And there is tremendous resentment against that. Mohammed Dahlan, who was supposedly the leader of Fatah in Gaza, never even came back. He has a huge villa there. So, by the way, did Abu Mazen. And he was in his villa in Cairo at the time, having just been in Germany. The whole leadership of Fatah in the left
before this fight, and Abu Mazen never even gave them instructions to fight. They had 30,000 Fatah troops in Gaza and only 8 to 10,000 Hamas, and yet they didn't fight. So I would not place too much, shall we say, credit on the political will of Fatah to really go ahead and deal with these issues.
But surely you have to take the chance and try to engage them.
For sure, I agree with
even
that.
If the chance is minimal,
I think we have to be realistic about what they can do and what they have done.
The strategy of this administration is to send in revenue into Fatah to make it clear that Fatah can deliver the goods, and at the same time to isolate the Hamas. Do you think that's a good strategy?
I think there are some real potential problems with it for some of the reasons that have been outlined. I mean, I think to just isolate Hamas, to just try to completely shut off Gaza is a problem. They did win an election there. There's 1.5 million Palestinians there, and I think you can't just hope that it would go away. It was very interesting to see over the last few days everybody talking about restarting peace talks. You know, you have this very interesting summit meeting next week with an Israeli and 3 Arab leaders, and Hamas being excluded.
Jordan and Egypt will be there.
Right. Because they are very worried by this.
Do you think that is a peace conference, or is it something else?
Well, I mean, I think
could it be described as a security conference? Because they're afraid that what Hamas did in the West Bank, they will also do in Cairo and in Jordan and in what's the fourth one there? Cairo, Jordan, and Saudi Arabia.
I mean, I think Egypt in particular, there's a great deal of concern. They've been very afraid about their radical element. Of course, Egypt is right next to Gaza, and so I think there's a great deal of concern about what this could all mean. I think you could call it a peace conference. I think in many ways it's a what the heck do we do now conference.
It's an attempt to shore up Mahmoud Abbas and the Palestinian Authority on Fatah. Bear in mind that Hamas is an offshoot of the Muslim Brotherhood, and the Muslim Brotherhood is the big alternative and opposition to Mubarak of Egypt. So that is something he definitely wants to choke off as soon as he possibly can.
Right.
Exit question. Assign Bush an interim letter grade from A to F for his management of the Gaza crisis. Mort Zuckerman.
B.
An
F. He's been disengaged. The only thing he knows how to do is put spin on it.
What do you think?
I'm not going to give a grade, but I think that question of what he's done before the Gaza crisis is an important one because he did disengage himself very much from the process.
What do you think?
C- for disengagement.
I think I'm with you.